Ready to start. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters and guests. This meeting of online presenters has now begun. Guests, please note that in order to be a member of our club, you must be a current or former active member of Toastmasters International and have completed at least 6 Toastmaster official speeches, or alternatively, if you have substantial relevant presentation experience, you may apply for membership after demonstrating your abilities in a 2 to 3 minute speech delivered during one of our club meetings. All requests for membership are subject to approval by the members of our club. If you have not already done so, please change your panel to ensure it shows your name and role if you have one. Right-click and select Rename to do so. We have members and guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, as a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note that we will be recording the meeting. Your video or audio contribution may be used for club marketing purposes. Also, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Please welcome our club president, DTM, Andrew Bern.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Let me just get to my spot here. There we go. All right. Welcome everyone who is visiting our club, which is Online Presenters. It's in its 5th year, and we focus on picking up skills such like online presenting and other skills. Soon we're going to be picking up a lot more skills because Toastmasters, Zoom has just released 2,500 new applications that are integrated within Zoom. That's one part. Then they've also done a whole bunch of integration with specific programs like calendar, email, and a few other things that would be very, very cool. So what I wanted to also say to all the officers is keep your eye out for announcements in the various districts that are having TLIs. The officers are still required to train, and we encourage everybody to do that. District 47, as an example, is having their TLIs. There's one on the 19th. If you're in Broward County or in the Boca area, there's also one on December 5th. But you can look around for programs that you can go to and attend. So that's what I have to share with you today. There's a lot of education taking place for all of our leadership and educational goals throughout the globe. I believe December 17th is when Matt Kenzie is also doing a leadership seminar, and he is our current international president. Back to you, Christine.
Thank you. Welcome, welcome, fellow Toastmasters and our most I'm trying to say 5 words at one time. Our most welcome guest. I got that out. You are important, each one of you. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome all of you to Online Presenters Toastmaster Club. I like to call it an elite location where we can really roll our sleeves up and get some good business done. And that is improving ourselves and everybody else in the making. For the benefit of all the guests, we're going to just show you the structure, and that is first are going to be our prepared speech rounds. Then after that, we're going to have our table topics, and then we'll have our evaluation round. Now, the theme of today is exactly what it showed on the chat, and that is the magic and new beginnings. Now, the reason why that is chosen is to let you know that you each are a shining star that you were meant to be. And I'll tell you why. When you smile, that's an international language. And when you smile, when you least feel like it to someone else, that is going above and beyond your call of duty of being friendly. And you can make a positive difference just for that. lighten up someone else's world, especially when you least feel like it. And I'll tell you, the magic of that is all of a sudden you start to get warm inside and your day just goes better. It's amazing how that happens. It's amazing what our one voice can do. Your speech, your attitude in the speech, your passion. You can move mountains and you can change hearts. And that is the power of the magic in new beginnings, starting with today and with tonight. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to start our meeting off with a bang. And what better yet than to have David Carr with our tip of the week.
Thank you, Christine. So I'm going to give a quick demo of some customization options for club websites. And I'm going to do it with a minimum of Oz. Counter, keep me honest. We'll see how we can do here. So this is the new version of a Toastmasters theme. This is the WordPress theme that's being introduced for 2023. And it is exactly what we have up on the online presenters site right now with that blue background. So these are two different versions of the same WordPress theme. So a WordPress theme, there are all these different choices. They're all starting points for a design for a website. And usually what I tell people is to pick the one that is closest to how you would like your website to look. And then you have some additional options. You can change the title up top and the tagline and the menus. You can change them through this customizer tool. But there's a lot more freedom to customize with this new version. And so I just want to give you a taste of how that works. So that same theme is being used on the Club Awesome website. This is my home club. This is the original club that used all this software. And one thing that's different for both these sites, I had a dominant image up top, but it was the same image on every page previously. And I wanted to change that so that if I went to a meeting agenda, I could get straight to the agenda. Or if I went to a blog post, we could have the featured image associated with that blog post. So when I go in here, instead of a customizer tool, now I have this button that says edit site. So instead of just editing the content of an individual page or an individual blog post, now I can edit all this stuff up top. And so if I wanted to customize this to have a search blank up top, which we added on the online presenters website, that would just be another block of content that I could drop in here. So I should be able to just say search. And here's my search widget. It's just going to be dropped in here. I've got the menu. And if I want to add another page to the menu, I can add one that I have called resources. And then if I wanted to have a submenu of some additional items underneath that, I can add my Club Mentor program. This little colored bar here is where I can add social media icons. So a link to our Facebook page, for example. Timer, this is supposed to be 3 to 5 minutes, by the way. I don't think we necessarily clarified that. But the big change in terms of colors is there's this little icon here that says, this is where I can go to change the colors of the topography of the website. And if I go into browse styles here, we have Toastmasters approved colors that we can drop in on this page, so we completely change the look of the website without necessarily having to change the theme. We have a lot more customization options. There's more to it, but I wanted to show you just a little excerpt of what I could get through in 3 to 5 minutes. And I hope hope that you see that there's some excitement here. There's a lot of possibilities for clubs who want to create an impressive and dazzling website. Back to you, Toastmaster of the Day.
Excellent, excellent training. In fact, it is making it easier and easier the way that you're doing this, David, that anybody can take this on, literally. And so it's like a point and shoot click and then put in what you want. So thank you so very much for that. Right now, we're going to start introducing our team here, our evaluation team. We're going to have the timer. Isabel, if you can please explain your role.
Yes, expressing idea within a specific time is one of the primary skills learned through the Toastmasters program. Therefore, we have a timer to help everyone who participated during the meeting to practice to being on time. As a timer, my responsibility is to keep track of the time throughout the meeting. I will show green signal, yellow signal, and red signal according to your speech time requirement. And during the evaluation segment, I will give a report on how we did with time. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster of the Day.
Excellent, excellent presentation on the important role of timer. Next is our off counter. And I don't know if off counter and grammarian is working together with that, but is someone the off counter specifically, or did the grammarian take it on?
It's separate roles.
It is.
Kristen.
Oh, okay.
Yes, separate
And
roles.
I have the agenda up and it does not say who the grammarian is. I'm so sorry. Who
Tricia is the grammarian.
Oh, yay. Trisha, you're so amazing. You did this just on the cuff and volunteered. Wow, what an incredible leader you are. So I'm going to let you give the word of the day, the big word of sarcasm, and explain your roles.
Okay, so we've decided that the odd counter and the grammarian are combined, right? I can do that.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I'll be listening as a grammarian for proper language and word of the day, which is sarcasm, and as a counter person as well, listening to those filler words if they're used. So far, so good. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent explanation, and we sure appreciate your teamship. Wow. Now we have a new role. It's called Watcher, and Sunny Fridge is going to explain to us what a watcher is.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster of the Day. As watcher, I will be watching all of you. I will focus on the visual portion of our online meeting space. That may include body language, virtual backgrounds. I'll be responsible for noticing all the meeting participants, not just the speakers, and I'll provide constructive feedback for improvement when it's time for my report. Back to you, Toastmaster of the Day. I'm exuberant.
I love that second word of the day. You just had to put it in there, and I appreciate that too. We have two words of the day, but the main one is sarcasm, okay? So as chat monitor, our next role, I'm going to let whoever volunteered step up and tell us what that entails.
That would be me, Madam Toastmaster. Hi, everybody. Madam Toastmaster and my fellow Toastmasters. As the chat monitor this evening, I'm going to be, ready for this, monitoring the chat. I will be doing that with two purposes in mind. Number one, if anything pops up in the chat that I think our Toastmaster needs to know about, I will alert her, and this means that she doesn't have to keep quite as sharp an eye about on the chat as she would otherwise. But primarily, I will be summarizing the contents of the chat room, and I will tell you at the end of the meeting if there were any remarks that were exceptionally valuable or exceptionally sarcastic, and I'll give you a report at the end. Madam Toastmaster.
Excellent. And I just want to give you a big hand to volunteering ASAP for that position. Thank you so very much. Well done. Our last role that we are going to discuss so that you all know the team, incredible team, is the vote counter. And that's Carolina. Carolina, thank you.
Christine, I'll be the vote counter today. I'll put a link on the chat and you will have to vote for the best speaker, the best table topic speaker, and the best evaluator. And at the end of the meeting, I will announce the winners. Back to you, Christine.
Fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Now we're getting into the main portion, meat and potatoes from Idaho, that's what they say, of our meeting, and that's the speaking. We have 3 speakers that have stepped up to make it happen. We are going to listen and learn, and we're going to learn also from the evaluation team that will come in afterwards. Our first speaker, it's always important to be first. And thank you, Joni-Renee Laidlaw. She is doing presentation mastery, level 3, increasing knowledge using descriptive language. The title is, Can You Imagine? The speech is 7 minutes. That's 5 to 7 minutes. The timer, do you want to let her know what you'll be doing?
Yes, I will give the green signal and 5 minutes, yellow signal and 6 minutes, and red signal and 7 minutes.
Excellent. I'm going to ask the timer after each speaker if you just want to put the time in the chat so that we can have that after each speaker. If you can do that, please.
Sure.
Excellent. Okay, let's give the floor to Joni. Thank you, Joni.
And I'm safe. Your name gone abroad. According to York Times by Miss. Now, for those persons who aren't too into our culture and are unaware that they're even singing patois in Harvard now, they may not be an ambassador for our country. A stout woman who carried the weight of our language that she wore. You can imagine? Can you imagine that called Jack Mandora? Me not choose none. Personally, unless it was Toastmaster Don that was doing it, or maybe Toastmaster answered the role of the tongue in the way that we would state that phrase. As you can see, varied letters are pronounced in different ways and in different rhythmic sounds to ensure that the language is created with a vibe and a rhythm that demonstrates storytelling. I didn't have the time to prep our speaker in advance. Now, as it relates to the New York Times, what they stated was Jack Mandora, me not choose none, loosely translated to Jack Man of the Door, and I was like, go, that would not be correct. It is actually a phrase which means that I choose no side. And then utilize cunning to get their way. Other animals had their own things that they were able to accomplish. They could utilize the physical strength. But Anansi, he was cunning. His mind, his brain, his ability to weave a web of wonder, wit, and sometimes some sarcasm in amazing exuberance to get the outcome he desired.
Joni, just a minute, and I'm so very sorry. You're coming in and out. We want to hear every word. It has been suggested that maybe if you want to go to, we can go on to speaker 2 and you can log off and come back on. Maybe that will do it because we're not getting the whole speech. Would that be okay?
You're frozen now, Joni.
It could be that my internet until another time. I think it's the internet.
Do you want to try coming back in and I'll go to the second speaker and then that way we can try it again?
Okay, yes, I think we should move forward with that plan.
I think
Okay.
Joni is frozen up again. Yep.
Yeah, Joni, you're freezing for us.
She's just said sure in the chat. So if
Okay,
we move
good,
to the
good.
second speaker and then if she can come back in, it may work better next time.
Excellent. We'll do that. And that's one thing we're all learning from. We have no choice when it comes to the internet frenzy. They have a mind of their own sometimes. So this is the best way to go. And hopefully we can get her back on. Our next speaker is Antoinette Trim. And she is absolutely amazing every way. In fact, she was on this Zoom a half hour before everybody else got on because I got on there at the same time, making sure I get there on time. So I'm impressed with her. She is doing the Visionary Communication Level 2, Learning Your Style, Understanding Your Leadership Style. Her title of her speech is, Am I a Leader? And this is a 5 to 7 minute speech. And the timer, since we went through that on the first speaker, we will just continue on and introduce Antoinette. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Toastmaster of the day and my fellow Toastmasters. I am a leader. I didn't think so. I always thought that a leader is more or less a politician, a manager, or even a supervisor. But I just discovered that I can lead every day from my quiet little corner because I interact with people. I do not interact with inanimate things. There are 5 pointers in which every one of us can cultivate our inner everyday leadership styles. Firstly, identify your passion. And every passion yields a mission. What are you passionate about? I think by now, most of you know that I am passionate about ASL, American Sign Language. And would you believe a church member asked me to teach their dance group ASL. And I'm sure that will be bringing more meaningful for me, as well as it will allow me to enrich others. We all have feelings, experiences, opinions, and a voice, and they all have value. That brings me to the next point. You have a voice, so share it. For example, I was asked to write an article for the newsletter at work following a seminar on diabetes awareness. The facilitator is a nurse. He made certain statements. For example, Trinidad and Tobago is number 3 in amputations. I didn't get the opportunity to ask him number 3 per capita, or is it number 3 in the region, or is it number 3 in the world? So I told my manager I needed to verify the information before I submit the article for printing. You have a voice, so why not share it? Equally important is to pursue humility. My number 3 point. Ask yourself, how can I pursue a humble pathway? I believe some of us know leaders who are pompous, arrogant, rude, and controlling. And of course, they would have met the bitter end. An everyday leader or good leader realize that others do have experiences, they may differ, and their voices also matter. Consequently, listening. Everyday leaders are good listeners. We don't know everything. By listening, we absorb different perspectives, insights, knowledge. And in doing that, we garner gems of wisdom of both successes and failures. When we think of failures, most people will say, I am no good. Let's turn our failure into muscle. Accept the fact. You're going to fail many times, and that's non-negotiable. The strengths of a leader not only built on successes, but also on some failures. And I'm quoting here, Usain Bolt. In 2001, he made his first world stage appearance at Hungary's 2001 International Amateur Athletic Foundation World Youth Champ. You know, he didn't win. And in August 2001, Usain Bolt was disqualified from the 100-meter final for false starting in a race, which was won by his fellow countryman and trainer, Johan Blake. But look at some of the successes. By the time Usain Bolt retired in 2017, Bolt's 9.69 seconds at the 2008 Olympics was his third best time in the 100-meter. Do you think you like failures now? In essence, as I said earlier, you don't have to be a CEO or a manager or even a vice president to be a leader. We all do possess some aspects of leadership qualities. It is just a matter of grooming our skills to become a more effective or a better successful leader, or to become one out of this world. Back to you, Toastmaster of the day.
Excellent, bravo. I love your definition of what is a leader. And there's many out there, but this definitely was right on. Thank you so very much. Wonderful, wonderful. Right now, we're going to go into our third speaker. And Joni did mention she's going to speak next week to work on the internet, which we know those things come up and we roll with it. And I know it's going to be worth the wait, very much so. So with Antoinette, am I a leader? Now we're going to move on to Dr. Andrew Bern, and his level is Dynamic Leadership Level 5, Demonstrating Expertise Lead in any situation. And his topic, one word, family. This is a 5 to 7 minute speech, and we can't wait to learn from Dr. Bern.
You're still muted, Andy.
Fellow Toastmasters, dignitaries, and all of those that are listening in on Zoom. I want to share with you something that is very important. And this comes from Jim Rome, who said that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And of course, that's a very famous quote. Some people have actually done studies on that to prove him a little bit wrong, because it extends out not only to the 5 people that you spend the most time with, but also the people that they spend the most time with. And he has statistics and numbers that would bore the tears out of you. But the point I'm trying to get at is that think of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Well, until you're about 18, the people that you spend the most time with is who? Your family. And therefore, you can estimate and think about what impact that family will have on your growth, your upbringing, your behaviors. I'm going to take an example of 3 short stories that give you an idea so that you can think about what would happen if I was in that family. The first one is Oprah. Now, Oprah Winfrey is very famous, but she had a very difficult beginning. She lived in poverty. She lived with a single mother. She lived in a circumstance that she was raped and had a child at age 14 who later died. She went through a lot of tragedies. But what did she do? As the old biblical saying says, she went and picked herself up by her bootstraps and proceeded to get better. And when I say get better, what do I mean by that? I mean that from those beginnings, you wouldn't really think that she would accomplish much, but she became one of the Fortune 500 richest Black women in the world. She had a TV show. She became an actress. She has in famous movies such as The Color Purple and others. If you go to Wikipedia and look her up, you'll see, oh my God, how did someone achieve so much without having a whole family to support her, to have someone that achieved that much? I want you to think about that when you talk about the obstacles that are preventing you from having success. The second person I wanted to talk about just very briefly is John McCain. I met John McCain on several occasions when I was doing legislative lobbying for my college, and he was a fascinating character. He's a 3rd generation naval aviator. That's right. His father was a naval aviator, his grandfather was a naval aviator, and he was a naval aviator, all having gone to the Naval Academy in Bethesda. And one would say, well, what will John be as he grows up? What would he be? Well, it seemed like his destiny was geared out for him because his father and his grandfather both served in the military, both went to the Naval Academy, and it seemed like his life was pretty much set in place. Think about your life. What were the influences on your life that took you to where you are right now? The third story I'm going to share with you is my own father. Now, when you look at Oprah's life and hear about her tragedies and what led to her situation and how she overcame that, I look at my own father. My own father was born in 1918. And during the Depression, his own mother gave him up to an orphanage because she couldn't afford to maintain the likes of him and his brother. Imagine that, your own mother giving you up to an orphanage. He finally came back to the home that he lived with his brother. And you have to ask yourself, and then what happened? Well, you might have heard of something called World War II. Yes, he was in World War II, but because he had taken the route of going to college, the first one in his generation to go to college, first one in his family, and picked up some skills like bookkeeping and other kinds of skills, accounting, finance, and even typing. Because of all those skills, he wound up, when he was drafted, going into Washington, D.C., and he served in the intelligence community. He never had to go overseas. His life was never at risk, but he was involved and providing service in the intelligence community. What did that do to him? Well, it didn't have the same post-traumatic effects that a John McCain went through. John McCain, who was a prisoner of war in the hotel, was called the Hotel Hong Kong, Vietnam, and he went through torture. When he came back, having survived that, he served in the he left there and then went into politics, served in both Congress and served in the Senate. But if you notice, he couldn't really move his left arm. It was broken multiple places. So these things occur. And you have to ask what kind of experiences people are going through and how does it impact your own life? In the case of my father, he had to live with abandonment issues throughout all of his life. His mother gave him up. And then when he came back from the military, his brother, who was supposed to take care of him, put him to work in his company, but really screwed him the rest of his life. He said, "You don't have the money that I had in putting into the business, therefore I'm going to keep you on a lesser level." And so those things had an impact on the whole family as you grew up. And you ask yourself the question, what impact, as Jim Rome says, does your family have on you? Because from age 0 to 18, they're the ones that are going to spend the most time with you. They're the ones that are going to impact your life. Thank you very much.
Excellent, absolutely excellent. Family. What impact does your family have on you? I'm going to be thinking about that for quite a while. So thank you very much for your wonderful, wonderful training and giving us another way to look at things. Right now, I want to say thank you to our speakers. Absolutely fabulous. Quite a bit of work has been put into each one. Right now, we're going to call for the timers report. I had her put them in chat, but if you just want to go ahead and let us know, and then we're going to vote on our two speakers.
Both of our timers are well within the time limit. Speaker Antoinette is her time was 6 minutes 17 seconds, and Speaker Andrew Bern is 7 minutes 10 seconds.
Excellent. We have such an excellent team. Everyone is above and beyond. Thank you very much. Right now, let's please vote. Our vote counter is Caroline, and if you can please send your vote to her. And I do want to find out, Joni, did you want to speak? Because I think you texted me and said you wanted to wait till next week. Can you let us know what you want to do first? Okay.
No, so it's going to be a problem. It's the internet until next week.
Okay, excellent. We cannot wait. It's going to be well worth the wait. Thank you so very much. So let's go ahead and please, there's a link in the chat for you to vote for your voter. Let's just take a second and do that real quick. Let's get 100% voting today to just really, we have two incredible speakers and they sure made a positive difference and put a lot of time in this. So let's go ahead and get that done. Let's be 100%ers. Remember, today is the magic of new beginnings. So it starts with putting in your vote, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to move on. And that is now to our table topics. I am so excited to introduce our table topics master. And that is none other than Kim. Kim, we're so glad that you took the time to do that. And I'm going to give the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Our topics master is muted.
I am sorry. I'll start over. Thank you, Toastmaster of the Day, Christine Campbell, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. My name is Kim Leeming, and I'm honored to be leading the table topics tonight. As Christine mentioned, this is the impromptu speaking portion or the off-the-cuff portion of the meeting. Tonight's theme of the day was listed on the website as satire and parody, so I went with that. And the word of the day, as you know, is sarcasm. The definition of the word of the day is the use of irony to mock or convey contempt. And I'm having a little bit of a technical issue as well, so I'm just going to go real quick to it so you can get the idea, but you won't see me. We now interrupt the normally scheduled meeting from online presenters with breaking news from SNN, the Sarcastic News Network. A new band is making headlines across the globe. It's a group of musician crocodiles who formed a band that perform parody. Let me get back to this. Songs. It is a pun croc band. On to the next story. There is a dangerous virus now being passed electronically, verbally, and by hand. This virus is called Worm Overload Recreational Killer, or WORK, work. If you receive work from any of your colleagues, your boss, or anyone else via any means, do not touch it. This virus will wipe out your private life completely. If you should come into contact with work, put on your jacket and take 2 good friends to the nearest pub. Purchase the antidote known as the Work Isolator Neutralizer Extractor, otherwise known as WINE, or WINE. Alternate products include Bridge Environment Eradication Resolution, or BEER, and Benign Orderly Overload System Enhancer, or BOOZE. Administer the antidote repeatedly until work has been completely eliminated from your system. You should forward this warning to 5 friends. If you do not have 5 friends, you have already been infected and work is controlling your life. Update: after extensive testing, it has been concluded that best equivalent extractor remedy, or BEER, may be substituted for wine, but may require a much more generous application. In other sarcastic news, recent university studies have revealed that alcohol increases the size of the send button on your email or text by 89%. Are you ready for a fun round of table topics? I hope so. Tonight's table topics are going to be a little bit unusual. I'm going to share a sarcastic remark. I will then follow the sarcasm with table topics question. You will each have 1 to 2 minutes to answer. Please keep in mind that tonight's word of the day is sarcasm. The first table topic, or the first sarcastic quote of the day, is, "I would like to apologize to anyone I have not yet offended. Please be patient. I will get to you shortly." The question for that sarcasm is, what's the strangest or most annoying thing a friend has ever done at your house or said to you? Toastmaster David Carr.
Can you repeat the question, please?
I most certainly could. The question is, do you want the whole quote too? The quote is, "I would like to apologize to anyone I have not yet offended. Please be patient. The night is young. I will get to you shortly." The question is, what's the strangest or most annoying thing a friend has ever done at your house or said to you?
Thank you for the question, Topics Master. You know, I think the problem with me on table topics is I try to be too honest and come up with an actual answer to the question where I ought to be able to pivot and just make something up on the fly. Strangest thing at my house. I mean, my house is a strange place. And the strangest or most insulting thing that has happened at my house? Here I am twisting in the wind, trying to think of the thing that would be outstanding. I mean, I suppose the sarcasm that I come into for the most is from my children, particularly my daughter, who is no end of sarcasm about any topic that has ever come up, that has come in front of her in the history of the world. She has been sarcastic and rude and sometimes a little bit insulting about. But the top one, I don't know. I think there's just too much competition, Madam Topics Master.
Thank you, David. I honestly was not trying to trip you up with that one, so I apologize. Next sarcastic quote. Robin Williams once said, "Why do they call it rush hour when nothing moves?" Question. If you time, this is a little bit of a stretch, but go with me on this. If you time traveled naked 200 years in the past, how would you prove that you were from the future? Toastmaster Jim Barber.
Oh, thank you, Madam Topics Master. If I were to time travel naked, I'm really puzzled as to why you threw in that qualification. If I were to try time travel naked 200 years in the past, how would I prove that I was from the future? Well, first of all, I'm not sure that I would want to prove that I'm from the future, because they would probably ask about how wonderful everything is. I mean, we know from watching the Jetsons a few years ago as a cartoon, some of you may remember the Jetsons. And of course, everybody knew that by this point, we would all have flying cars. We would all have robots to do our housework for us and that sort of thing. I do not have a robot to do my housework. Zumba doesn't count. Roomba doesn't count. I certainly do not have a flying car. The comment before about rush hour, I try to avoid rush hour at any cost because you cannot rush. Frankly, 200 years, if I were to go back in time 200 years, hopefully not naked, I would not want to prove that I was from the future. I would simply want to blend in with the society that they had then, because I think all things considered, it was pretty nice. As far as my going back naked, I think I would want to find some clothes first, because I would have a hard time blending in with society, depending upon where I went back to, but I think so, if I were au naturel, so to speak. So I'm not quite sure on answering that one, but I do know I would not try to prove that I was from the future. Madam Topics Master.
Thank you, Jim. I actually found that on a Toastmasters suggested table topics question. Okay, moving on to the next sarcastic remark. My neighbor's diary says that I have boundary issues. Question. What is the most surprising thing you have seen in someone else's home? Toastmaster Carolina Ramirez.
Thank you, Kim, for your question. This is very hard, but I think that the most stranger thing that I've seen in someone else's house, maybe strange pets, like kind of mice. 10 years ago, a friend of mine told me that she doesn't want pets anymore because she used to have a kind of mice. I cannot remember the name exactly, and I saw it. It was a family, but then she told me that it was a very strange family because sometimes the little ones started to eat one of them. I think, alive. And that was a very strange behavior to hear from her. And I think that is the most strange thing that I've seen in a home, and I've heard, because I'm not used to that. The family, it's to one of the members of the family, and it was disgusting to hear. And I took the decision that I only want traditional pets like a dog or a cat, but not something very exotic. Kim, back to you.
Thank you, Carolina. We also had that experience with mice. The only thing worse than the mice eating their babies was having to feed the baby mice to the snake that our son had. That was just awful. Next sarcastic remark is, just because I don't care doesn't mean I don't understand. Question: what motivates you the most and why? Toastmaster Graham Carnes.
Madam Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, before we get to that, I did note that you spoke earlier about the pun crocs, and which reminded me, of course, when you're talking about crocodiles and you're talking about music, then obviously you're talking about musical reptilians. But how do you know the difference between a crocodile and an alligator? Well, it's easy. You just say goodbye to it. And if it goes, see you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile. That's the response. But getting back to your question, which I have to tell you, promptly forgotten all about. I think the question was something along the lines of, what do you do when a topics master gives you a question that you can't remember because you really, really, really wanted to tell a joke? Well, what you do under those circumstances is you tell the joke and you come up with even more atrocious puns. In fact, you come up with puns that are so bad that they are considered in and of themselves punishment. And at that point, you note that you've got a green light and you stop. Madam Topics Master.
Thank you, Graham. That was hilarious. The next sarcastic remark, Ashley Brilliant once said, sometimes I need what only you can provide, and that is your absence. Question: what is your favorite thing to do that you prefer to do alone rather than in groups? Toastmaster Tricia Smith.
Somehow I knew I was going to get that one. My favorite thing to do when I'm by myself, and I'm sorry I didn't pay attention to your sarcastic remark. Hopefully it's not related, but I like to read. So I do it on a daily basis, and it's a de-stressor for me. So if I want to zone out and get into something that I can learn or just imagine or read somebody else's story, that's what I can do. The weakness I have is the type of reading I tend to do is based on things I like to learn about rather than just for fun. So I need to do better with that, where I can get into some kind of adventure. I tend to watch movies more like that rather than picking stories that I read for facts. So I need to keep talking because I'm still on the timer. Reading, and by myself, I like to exercise. So de-stressing and reading, those are two individual. Yoga, walking, used to be a runner, too old for that now. It's bad on the knees, I guess. Biking when the weather's nice. I'm in 4 seasons, so can't do that in the winter very well unless it's inside. So I do exercise inside a lot, pretty much every day. That's another good de-stressor. So I use those things to de-stress. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Tricia. Toastmaster of the day, Christine. How are we doing on time?
I don't think Christine is still with us. I was just looking at that and thinking she appears to be not here.
Let's go ahead and
has her podcast, and so I'm taking over the role of general evaluator. Timer, can you tell us where we are?
Yes, we are at 8:39. I think it's just right to move into the general evaluation segment, and I'm posting the table topic time in the chat. And every speaker is meets the time requirement.
Okay, thank you very much. In general evaluation, one of the things that
Andrew, I have been down as general evaluator since the beginning, so I have the general evaluation prepared. If you can take over as Toastmaster for the rest of the meeting, that would probably work, but I'm perfectly happy to take on general evaluation since I have the general evaluation prepared.
I would be happy to do that. Graham, go ahead and take over the general evaluation stage.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Mr. President, for that. The general evaluation in a Toastmasters club varies from club to club. My intention tonight is I was going to give some comments to our Toastmaster before we went any further because I knew she would have to leave, but since she has already gone, I'll save those for a little later. Let's move to the evaluations that we had. We had 2 evaluations here. And the first of those is by Jim Barber. Jim, can you please present your evaluation this evening?
With pleasure, Mr. General Evaluator. My fellow Toastmasters, our members and guests who are watching on the recording, but of course, especially Toastmaster Antoinette Trim. Antoinette, you are a joy to watch, because you work so hard at improving with every speech that you give. You take it serious. You never come and do a halfway attempt. It's obvious that you put a lot of time and effort into every presentation that you give. You want to improve, you do improve. You are at the level now of being an accomplished speaker. Congratulations, all the work has paid off. Everything, pretty much everything tonight was excellent. Your diction, your vocal variety, your speed and pacing, everything verbal worked. Visually, everything worked. Your background is simple, but it's professional. It didn't distract. It supported what you were doing. Again, everything worked. One of the things that I liked especially, and it's what you're doing it right now, before you spoke, you smiled. It's a simple thing, it's a small thing, but if you show that you are enjoying yourself, there is a greater chance that we're going to enjoy listening to you. And so that one little thing made a big difference in what you are doing. Now, let's see. I want to do this right. And so that meant I wanted to put, where'd it go? There we go. I wanted to put your smiling face up on the screen so that everybody could see it. That was so well done. Your gestures were powerful. They were congruent with what you were saying. They were a little on the low side. I would like to have seen them get a little bit more beside your head than anything else. But again, they were very good. I have one suggestion for you. You issued, let me get out of the way here. You had several points that you were making in your speech, and you raised your hand for number 1, point number 2, which is good, but I would like to see something a little more dramatic. It made it difficult to determine when you were moving from one step to another. And this also applies if you're doing one stage to another or one day to another or anything like that. If we were in a brick and mortar, if we were in an in-person meeting, I would suggest that you move from one place to another. But since you can't do that tonight, in a visual presence, I'd like to find some other way so that you can communicate visually to everybody that you are changing what you are talking about. Again, how you would do that is something completely up to you, but I would just like to see something that illustrates that you are changing your point. But this is a minor suggestion for what was an excellent presentation, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how you're going to knock it out of the park with your next one. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jim, for that evaluation. Moving on to our second evaluator this evening, and that's David Carr. So, David, what have we got?
Well, we've got a speech from Dr. Bern. I believe you mentioned, Andy, that this is practice for a contest.
Yeah.
And so I have some things that I'm going to give to you as pointers, areas of potential improvement. But I liked hearing a speech from you. I think I probably enjoy your speeches more when you're not doing PowerPoint, when you're speaking directly to us. And so you had a good framework where you talked about this idea of the people you spend the most time with having such an important impact on your life. But in counterpoint to that, you talked about the people who've had great absences in their life and overcame that to move on to be better and more impressive people along the way. I thought actually that since you weren't doing any kind of PowerPoint routine, this might have been a good excuse to stand up, to set yourself up in the room so that you could be giving a stand-up speech, particularly if this is practice for a contest. It's a speech contest. It's not a webinar contest. It's not a sitting down and doing Zoom contest. So if you can arrange things so that you could stand up, that probably would be a good thing to get practice on and using your body language in that stand-up mode. You had a good structure that you announced at the beginning. I'm going to tell you 3 stories. So that rule of 3 is always a good thing to frame things as. But I think that there was a little bit of meandering, though, in that, particularly when you got to John McCain. Now, also, speaking to an international audience, you may actually have to explain who John McCain is and what the significance of John McCain is as a United States senator, a very significant one for many years. And people on the other parts of the world may have heard the name, but may be also fairly vague about who he is or what his significance was. And also to talk about John McCain, to talk about that naval background without going into, I thought right away, oh, well, wait a minute, isn't he going to explain about the prisoner of war experience and how formative that was? Now, you came back to it later, after you'd introduced the story of your father, and you talked about how he didn't have the same experience that John McCain had, but organizationally, it would have been better to compartmentalize that, to talk about John McCain in a little bit more detail, why he was remarkable, not only this inheritance that he had of being out of this naval family, but what he overcame to move on with his life. And so I think probably maybe the most powerful story, and the one that needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, is about your father and that contrast. I think you have a good kernel of a story there, a good kernel of a speech, and if you have a chance to practice it once more before you have to give it in the contest, that would probably be a good idea. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, David, for that evaluation. Andre, if you're still around, I know that you haven't actually had a role tonight. I wonder if you were taking any notes during the table topics session, or if you have any observations that you would like to make about the topics presenters. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about those. So think about the table topics that we had, and then I'll come back to you again a little later. I just want to make sure that you've got some role here tonight, since you were down to evaluate and didn't get a chance. Moving on with the rest of my general evaluation, and I know that I have a tendency to blow the time out on this, so I'm going to be very careful here. Let me begin by saying that I thought this was a good meeting. The Toastmaster did quite a fun and fine job. One observation that I would make is that Christine referenced for guests a number of things that would be happening during the meeting, but of course we have no guests here tonight. Now, I might suggest that we don't need to do that, but I will also point out that I think it is valuable as Toastmaster to remind members of why we do what we do. And so I think that even if there weren't any guests here, it was good of Christine to draw our attention to why we are doing what we are doing. David's tip of the day, a really good use of the screen resource. We were able to see quite clearly what David was talking about when he was talking. He didn't need to bring himself into the image because it was a tip of the day. So well done, David. I did think it might be valuable, though, for you to remind everybody what WordPress for Toastmasters is. Now, I know that WordPress for Toastmasters is the content management system that runs on the top of WordPress for Toastmasters clubs. But there may be some other members of the club who don't know that they could, for example, turn their club websites into something as flash as ours. Well, not quite as flash as ours because they haven't got your experience, but you get the point. Always remember to give people the basics so that we know what's going on. Evaluator Jim, supportive and empathetic this evening. Good suggestions, including specifics like, for example, giving visual cues. And I like the suggestion that Jim gave to Antoinette that just 1, 2, and 3 is not quite as strong as make sure that we know when you're moving to the next point so that we can follow it along. One thing I would say is that when you're going to give suggestions, it's important to say why those suggestions are being made. And Jim sort of skirted around, it helps us get in our mind where the speaker is, but make that point, if necessary, bludgeon us so that we can take that away. I love, now where was I? Yeah, so that's Jim. I also love the use of tech, bringing up the picture of Antoinette to say this is what you look like when you're smiling, but don't let that become the reason for it being there. Like PowerPoint presentations, anything that you use as a visual support should be support rather than just showing off, as it were. Just that point. Now, David, as evaluator, mentioned the lack of PowerPoint, but Andrew and I have to agree. I really enjoyed this presentation from Andrew tonight because it was from the heart. A good suggestion, by the way, regarding standing and etc. The structure, I thought, perhaps a little wishy-washy, which was ironic, given that your major suggestion to Andrew was to watch the structure because it got a little disjointed. But having said that, some really good suggestions about the use of narrative structure, and that will help Andrew improve this speech the next time he gives it. Topics Master Kim, I love the topics and I love the puns and I love the quotes, but I'm not sure that we actually had time for all 3 of those things. If you hadn't had the puns at the beginning of your presentation, fun as they were, that would have given us room for at least 1, possibly 2 more table topics. And given that I haven't seen, as I say, Andre say anything tonight, or Sunny for that matter, it might have been nice if we had had just a little bit of extra space. On the subject of Andre, Mr. Smolenko, any observations you want to make about the table topics presentations?
Well, thank you very much, General Evaluator, Mr. Kearns. I appreciate this opportunity. I'll be brief as I can see the time is ticking. I've noticed about table topics given by David Carr. It was kind of nice to see him being stuck. First time in all these years. I know I'm being sarcastic. At the same time, it gave many of us pleasure. So hopefully you can do it again and again and again. And overall, David came up with an excellent way out of the story and talk about his daughter. Brilliant way. I like my daughter too. I will use it next time. Jim Barber, 200 years back in naked. Again, it was nice to see Mr. Sarcastic thinking and trying to find the sarcastic answer. He did come up with a story at the end of it, which I enjoy. And perhaps Mr. Barber could mention something about Toastmasters 200 years ago, or something like that. You would find a Toastmaster club, or just one of the suggestions. Carolina, the family of mice and eating each other. Ooh, nice and spooky. Now I understand why you want a dog and reasonable animal. A little word of improvements. Well, perhaps thinking about so unusual things in anything, cartoons, for example, or the movies, and use them. Graham Carnes, nice and smooth with educational points, alligators, crocodiles. I like that. And Trisha, what you like to do naked? Oh, sorry, naked. Sorry. What you like to do when you're home alone? Perhaps you could say, I'm not gonna tell you what I like to do when I'm home alone. And then come up with a story. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Andre, for that extemporaneous and table topic style table topics evaluation. I thank you for that. Moving on. Time to move to our R counter and grammarian. Trisha, you've been keeping tabs on our ums, ahs, and on our use of the word of the evening. And I'm not being sarcastic about this. I'd really like you to present that report now.
Okay, so I have a confession. I did not make an exact count of how many times the word of the day was used. It was used several, so much several that it was part of table topics and many speakers. So I did make a count. Andre was the most recent one, other than introducing me for this little speech part of my report. But I wanted to bring up a couple of other things I was really inspired about. The table topics presentation, some of the catchy phrases, because I get to be grammarian too, along with ah. So let me just mention some of the phrases, which I'm guilty of. The ah, the and I'm not pointing fingers, so I'm not going to give names, but just some of the common ones. Overall, it was excellent. It was hard to find the count. So double I's, the ah, the ah, the and the ah, those were the most common crutch words. And there's a trend. People who speak the most tend to use them the most, right? With some of the catchy phrases, I really liked Antoinette saying in her speech, which we've already talked about. Have a voice and share it. Turn your failure into muscle. I just thought that was worth stating again. And Andrew, the sum of 5 people that you know, family and people they know, those are things that are worth remembering, and the impact that your family has on you. We can all think about that. So overall, very good job, everybody. Everybody used it. So we're going to hear a lot from the chat box as well. So good job using that as part of table topics. Everybody had a share on that.
Thank you, Trisha. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
So that's the grammarian for words. Let's find out what the grammarian for visuals has to say. Our watcher for tonight is Sunny Fridge.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator. I liked our backgrounds that we had, and as watcher, I watched with admiration how Christine just gave us a great theme of the day instead of the original parody. And I appreciated that she was able to give us an idea about magical and new beginnings. So thank you, every Toastmaster, for figuring out really quickly how to get a great background. Kim, I noticed that when you turn your camera off, you have no profile picture. It's just something I was watching. You have all these great graphics when you're on camera, but I'd love to see your smiling face when you turn off your camera. And finally, our first speaker, Joni, you referred to your t-shirt, but it was really hard to see. So if you do your speech next week, I don't know if there's any way that you might be able to refer to the Jamaican, I think it was words or something on your screen. Maybe you can figure out a way that we can see it a little clearer. And everyone kept saying you were freezing. Why don't you put on a sweater? Is that considered sarcasm? Back to you, General Evaluator.
Oh, thank you, Sonny. Yeah, how did I know somebody named Fridge would come up with a joke about that? Okay, moving on. Time now to find out actually anything in the chat, Jim, in brief, because we are running out of time. Anything you need to draw to our attention?
Not really. I would just remind everybody to save the chat. It doesn't take any time, and you never know.
You never know. There could be something useful in there. Finally, it's time to find out how we voted for this evening. Carolina Ramirez, can we have the result of the votes, please?
I found the winners. Drums, please. Best evaluator, Jim Barber.
Yeah, Jim.
Best table topic speaker, Graham Kearns. Woo. And best prepared speaker is Antoinette. Congratulations to the winners. Back to you.
Congratulations to all the other winners. Me, I cheated. I just rambled, but it worked. On that note, that's all I have as general evaluator. I will now hand control back to our president to call for no guest comments since there aren't any guests, and to wrap us up for this evening right on time by the look of it.
Well, the only thing that I would say is that please give your interest to David. And he is our Vice President Education. We need to have a Toastmaster and other key roles for next week. We do have about a minute left. If you talk quickly, David could jot down your interest in doing those roles, or you can put it in the chat for him. Go ahead, David, take over this section.
Sure. As Andy said, we do have Toastmaster of the Day open so far, as well as General Evaluator. And actually, it looks like